Another week, another hat. If you stay tuned for last week, or was it the week before? This is now another hat. Is this new or is this just a different hat that you have?
Oh, I got a whole collection, sir. A
I,
whole collection.
I don't know why. It's a waste of money.
And let me get this off my chest right now. You will not catch me riding around town with anything that says Super Bowl champions on it because we've been here. We've been Niners fans through the ups and downs. No Super Bowl gear for me. My stuff is from the Jim Tom Sula days, the Chip Kelly days, the Mike Singletary pulling his pants off at halftime days. And my persistence is going to reward me this Sunday when the 49ers beat the Chiefs in the Super Bowl.
Well, you see how we're starting out. So I think the number one thing that's coming up, football world, it's the biggest game of the year. We're going to start out with full Super Bowl preview and predictions. I want to do a full tail of the tape, offensive line versus defensive line, wide receivers versus corners. And those are the main matchups that happen. Then we're going to talk about quarterback versus quarterback, running back versus running back, and tight end versus tight end. Let's start in the trenches, right? O-line versus O-line. And I put who won each one for me on here. So offensive line versus defensive line. Let's start out with just who you got. Off of your offensive line versus their defensive line, who do you have?
Straight up attribute for attribute. Obviously, we have a future Hall of Famer at left tackle. They have a future Hall of Famer at defensive tackle. When you stack it up, I think that the Chiefs do have an edge on the defensive line, but the good thing for the 49ers is they have Kyle Shanahan, who has schemed around one of the best defensive tackles in the history of football, Aaron Donald, for years and years and years. And so I think that they're going to be able to find a way to stay away from Chris Jones and his destructive nature, which is why it's super important that we do not fall behind in this game. We have to play from ahead. We have to play from ahead. Ooh, I'm getting excited because if we get behind and we got to go into throw every down mode and Chris Jones can wreak his havoc, that's not going to look good for our center and left and right guard combo because it's probably a bottom 8 or 9 combination in the NFL. Now, they've been really good this year on paper because Kyle can scheme away from it. But when you get into that situation where you just have to drop back and pass every play, that's where Hall of Fame talents like Chris Jones and the other, they got a really, really good will you say his name? I'm not going to say his name, but you know who I'm talking about because I'll make a fool of myself trying to say his name. But they got a really good defensive end that can rush the passer, and we have to stay ahead. So I'm going to give a slight edge to the defensive line for the Chiefs.
Yeah, so just looking at the defensive line versus offensive line, Brock Purdy ranks 27th in protection rate, and the Chiefs rank second in pressure percentage. That includes pressures, hurries, sacks, all of it combined into one. So second in the entire league. Brock Purdy again ranked 27th in protection rate for his offensive line. So that one does go to the Chiefs. Now, just to be super transparent, I have 4 categories here. I have rushing for the offensive line for the Niners, rushing for the offensive line for the Chiefs, and then I have passing, and then I have passing for the Niners and the Chiefs as well. So I have 4 categories just to be super transparent on the end total. Niners take this one 3-1. They take 3 categories over the Chiefs 1. This would be tied 2-2 because there's one category that's relatively close, and that is the Patrick Mahomes ranks 22nd in protection rate, while the Niners rank 17th in pressure percentage. If Joe Thuney was actually playing this Sunday, I would probably give that one the more slight edge to the Chiefs, but I can't because he's not going to be playing, so I got to give that one to the Niners too. So 3-1 for me in total is going to go to the Niners. But defensive line for the passing downs, for sacks, hurries, pressures, all that stuff, that's going to go to the Chiefs, in my opinion. Now, when it comes to all the rushing stuff, defensive line and offensive line, that's going to both go to the Niners, in my opinion. You guys rank 3rd in rushing on offense and 3rd in rushing defense as well, while the Chiefs only rank 19th in rushing offense and then 18th in rushing defense. Not very good.
Yeah, well, you take the rushing defense of the Niners from the last 6 weeks, and it ain't that high. I promise you that. But Pacheco is an interesting player. The way he runs, it's not a ton of the outside zone reads that have hurt us this year. So we'll see. I mean, let's be honest. If we did every matchup in the NFL this year, I think the defensive line is always beating the offensive line for the most part because offensive line play is so hard in the NFL these days because I think any of
Yeah,
your big off athletic linemen, they're just like, you know what, I'm gonna go over here and rush the passer. So, some of these defensive tackles probably would have been great offensive linemen, but they wanted to rush the passer instead. So,
that's where all the glory is, right?
absolutely.
Yeah. So, in total, offensive line versus defensive line, the trenches on both sides. Niners going to take this one 3-1 in the categories. Now, talking about the wide receiver versus corners, I only took the top two corners and the top two wide receivers on both sides and matched them up because you're in a unique situation where the two best tight ends in football are matching up on this, they're on opposite teams. So when that happens, it's not like I'm taking the top three wide receivers here and top three wide receivers here, when in reality, the tight ends have to be stuck somewhere in either the number one targets or number two targets, somewhere around there.
Right.
So when looking at it, I matched up, and now you tell me where guys are going to match up because you know where your corners are going to sit for most of the matchups. And again, these are going to be rough estimations because a lot of corners these days and a lot of or wide receivers these days get moved around a lot, especially guys talking about like Debo gets moved around a lot. But looking at it, I have Ward versus Rashee Rice. Is that going to be the matchup that we see this Sunday a lot?
I, man, I keep going back and forth on this. I wanted to put together something, and I thought about this a lot. I really think that we're just going to run a lot of quarters and a lot of three high, and we're just going to stay away from the man because I think, the Chiefs activated Sky Moore. He's pretty fast. Rashee Rice is pretty fast. I just think the man-to-man stuff is where we can get hurt, and I don't think we're going to run a lot of it unless we're getting absolutely shredded. I think that we let our linebackers, who are extremely talented, blanket Kelsey and handle that. And then if they're going to beat us with Justin Watson or, player C or whatever that is, then so be it. But Charvarius Ward against Rashee Rice is probably going to be the marquee for our defense against their offense, just because I really think the 49ers are going to go into this game and say Travis Kelsey is not going to be the one that beats us. So that's probably, if they're going to put up points, where it comes from.
Yeah, definitely. And if you look at the matchup itself, if that's who is matching up against each other, Ward has allowed 1.4 yards of target separation, while Rashee Rice has 2.49 yards of target separation. And then Mooney Ward is at 12.4 yards per reception, while Rashee Rice is at 11.9 yards per reception. And then if we're just talking about man coverage, because zone is more of a scheming thing and you have multiple guys in there and we can't just talk about just zone by itself, but this is who matching up against man versus man. Ward has a 70.4 man coverage success rate, which is, if I remember correctly, it's like top 10 in the league this year. While Rashee Rice only has a 36.4% man coverage success rate, which is somewhere around 30-ish. So with all of the Chiefs wide receivers, they're all going to be pretty low on the man coverage success rate. Not very high, but kind of have the flip side of success for the corners for the 49ers. And I put Ambry Thomas as your guys' number 2 receiver. Would that be correct? Because I know you guys like to match stuff up kind of differently.
Yeah, so Diamondor Lenore is our number 2, but then
Right.
he kicks inside to the slot when they go. So for the purposes of this conversation, the Chiefs aren't going to be running a ton of 2 tight end, fullback, running back, 1 wide receiver stuff. So D'Lo is going to spend a ton of time on the slot. Ambry's going to be outside on the edge,
And that's why I took him.
Where they're going to try to hurt us with Ambry, because right now the whole offensive strategy when Ambry Thomas is on the field is just send that guy deep and have him commit pass interference. So I'm sure his statistics are they're probably actually not as bad as I think they are, just because he keeps getting burned on penalties and not actual huge passes given up. But
yeah, so Ambry Thomas is at 1.6 yards of target separation. I took Justin Watson because he's technically next up on yards. 1.32 yards of target separation. 9.8 yards per reception for Ambry Thomas, while Justin Watson has 17 yards per reception. So he's going to be more of that deep threat guy, but he's only going to command maybe 2-3 receptions a game, if you're lucky. And then when talking about the man coverage success rate, Ambry Thomas is at 63.7% and Justin Watson only at 33% for the man coverage success rate. So I think on this side, we're looking at winners for the Niners side, Mooney Ward, Ambry Thomas, because it's not that I believe in Ambry Thomas. It's more that I don't believe in whoever that third And I say receiver because Travis Kelce is obviously going to be your 1, Rashee Rice is going to be your 2, and then whoever, like you said, Guy C is. It doesn't really matter that much. I could have put anybody else in here. I just don't believe in them as much as I'm going to believe in the Niners corner over on this side over here.
I have a feeling as we break this down, we're going to break down all these statistics, and the statistics at the end should tell you that we should thump them. Unfortunately, it's one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time on the other side, so it's a very good equalizer.
Yeah, and then if you look on the other side, L'Jarius Sneed versus Brandon Ayuk, I'm gonna give the W to L'Jarius Sneed. I mean, if you look at these statistics, he's like top 3 in everything. 1.3 yards of target separation. Brandon Ayuk 1.78, 9.8 yards per reception for L'Jarius Sneed, 17.9 yards per reception. It's pretty ridiculous for a guy who's a 1, and 77.3 percent man coverage success rate, while 37% of man coverage success rate for Brandon Ayuk. And this one's the closest one. Again, this isn't like a dig at Brandon Ayuk. Brandon Ayuk's not one of my favorites because he's a Niner. I hate that guy. But if I didn't hate the Niners, he would be one of my favorite receivers to watch. The separation rate is usually pretty good. If you look at his past seasons compared to this season, past seasons, last 2 seasons have been a lot better than this season. Doesn't mean he's a bad wide receiver at all. It doesn't mean he's taken a step back. If you look at the yards and the receptions, everything's through the roof. L'Jarius Sneed has just been playing on a different level this year, and I think that this actually might be the marquee matchup here because Sneed has been following guys around the entire year, and it kind of just depends on what Ward is going to do if he's going to follow Rice around the entire time. And then if you look at Trent McDuffie, the same thing. You're talking about a guy who is all pro level type of play against Debo. And this is the one where it's hard, is because Debo lines up everywhere and Trent McDuffie doesn't follow guys everywhere. He's like a slot guy. That's where he sits. So that one is kind of more of if we're talking about just receivers, I'm going to once again give the W to the defensive side of the ball here. 1.8 yards of target separation versus 2.17, 10.7 yards of receptions versus 14.9, and then 62.2 man coverage success rate versus 24.5. So again, I'm going to give it to the defensive side of the ball. Both those corners are really, really, really good on both sides. So, well, Mooney Ward's are really good. Ambry Thomas is just kind of there. So it's more of I don't believe in Justin Watson or whoever the guy C is. So in my mind, when it comes to tail of the tape, wide receivers versus corners, I'm giving this one a tie 2-2. What do you think?
I think that Brandon Ayuk can go for 3 receptions and 22 yards this Sunday, and we could still put up 37 points. So it's hard to say. Debo's going to get 12 to 14 touches, and 6 of those might come from out of the backfield. You know, Debo Samuel is the backup running back in this matchup, and those little pot passes and those little screen passes that they do with them is really just an extension of the running game, even if it does count as a reception. And Trent McDuffie, he's gonna have to come up and tackle Debo Samuel, and we're gonna find out if he wants to. Maybe he does. I have no idea. Brandon Ayuk is extremely physical, especially in the run game, and we're just gonna see this 49ers wide receivers have an ability to break corners just with their sheer physicality and will power. And we'll see if the Chiefs are up for it, because he may shut down Brandon Ayuk. It may not stop us, you know, and that's fine. And if we motion Christian McCaffrey out into the slot, who's our 3rd best wide receiver is Christian McCaffrey, then what? So we'll see. It's definitely an interesting chess match. It makes me feel super disappointed in these times when we look at a matchup like this, that it's only one game. You know, one of the things that makes like the NBA great is the 7-game series and being able to go back and forth and make adjustments and everything like that. So I'd like to see the Chiefs and 49ers play a best of 5 and just see who would win those 5 as you throw matchups in there. But this is the Super Bowl and there's no best of 5s. It's put everything on the table. And I know Andy Reid is going to pull some play from the 1973 Rose Bowl, and he's going to pull some play from, you know, the 1986 Super Bowl. And, you know, their defensive tackle might check in at fullback and throw a pop pass touchdown. And there's going to be a whole bunch of crazy shit on Sunday. So it's up to the 49ers to just stick to their game, because the Chiefs have to find a way to manufacture offense, because we know we can score. So Um,
I think that's the most interesting matchup out of everybody. It's not the trenches, it's not wide receiver versus corners, it's not the tight ends, it's not the quarterbacks, it's not anybody but how can the two coaches beat each other is almost a more interesting conversation than the rest of them. We can have the rest of the conversation. Travis Kelce versus George Kittle. Kittle's better this year. Patrick Mahomes versus Brock Purdy. That's not even a conversation, really. We can go down the list of things, but the most interesting is how are these two coaches going to scheme their teams to actually win this game? That's the most interesting thing here because we have two of the best offensive-minded coaches in the game today trying to win.
Well, and frankly, unlike any other team in the league that's marquee and always in the hunt and everything like that, the 49ers have been in the NFC Championship game for the last 5 years with three
Yeah,
different quarterbacks. Like
right.
nobody does that. The face of the 49ers is Kyle Shanahan. Unlike any
Mm,
other team in the NFL. The face of the Chiefs is Patrick Mahomes. And you know what I mean? Like these other teams, they have the face of their franchise and it's always their quarterback or their star player or whatever. For the 49ers,
yeah,
it's Kyle Shanahan. And it's up to him. I know everybody loves the Chiefs DC. He's top 7, top 8 in the league. Kyle
yeah,
Shanahan is one of the greatest play callers in the history of football, at least top 10 there. It's up to him to break it. Like you
yeah.
got to break that defense and you got to call the plays. You have to scheme up something. Brock Purdy can execute your game plan and you need to win this game. It's important. You can't lose another one. Everyone wants to say, "Oh, Kyle's just like Andy Reid." Andy Reid was with the Eagles for so long and he couldn't get it done. No, Andy Reid won like one playoff game, got bounced. One playoff game got bounced. Went 4 and
Yeah.
12. No, Kyle has been to the Super Bowl, lost. Been to the NFC Championship game, lost. This isn't Andy Reid. You keep getting there, you got to close the door. And I'm not going to do the whole thing where they give him the Falcons loss. That's on your boy Dan Quinn. Like he lost that game. He was the
Mm,
head coach, not Kyle Shanahan. But
yeah.
you're back for the third time. I'm not going to blame you that Jaquaski Tart dropped the interception. I'm not going to blame you. I'm not going to blame you that Brockett's elbow got blown out, even though you called the play that it happened on. This is on you. You
Mm,
got to call the plays. You got to scheme it up. We have one of the best offenses anyone's ever seen. We have weapons everywhere.
yep.
You have to make it happen.
And looking at it, especially looking at it too, where in the matches of like tight end versus tight end, I'm taking the Niners. The only one that they went down the line here is the quarterback one for the Chiefs. And then the running back, same thing. Christian McCaffrey is not even a conversation to have. But you guys should win this game. You look at statistics. You look at who wins the marquee matchups. You guys should win this game. There's no
Give
reason
me
looking at
chills.
everything where you guys should lose it. It's your game to lose. That's the thing. It's your game to lose.
Yeah, and that sucks.
But just don't tell Patrick Mahomes that. And
No.
that's the issue here is if you have Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce on one side of the ball and a dominant defense on the other side, anything can happen. And that's the issue here is no matter what we say running down this list is I'm still taking the Chiefs regardless.
That's because you hate the Niners, bro.
Yeah,
Stop
fuck
it.
you guys.
I honestly, I don't know. I think you'll make me make a prediction by the end of the game. But if you told me it was 21-20 and we lost on a Jake Moody missed field goal, that wouldn't surprise me. If you told me it was 21-20 and we won on a Jake Moody field goal, that wouldn't surprise me. To be honest with you, if you told me it was 40-17 and we went in and fucking thumped them because they got nothing for us, they can't score like us.
Yeah.
Our defense is just as good. So if our offense is better and the defenses are even, that means we win. That's how football math works. Somebody told me that. If you told me we thumped them, it wouldn't surprise me. But fuck if it ain't Patrick Mahomes, man. I would love it to be Josh Allen because he's a choke artist. I would love for it to be Lamar Jackson because he can't. There actually, realistically, there's only one other quarterback in the entire league that scares me as much as Patrick Mahomes, and it's Joe Burrow because he's diced us up so many times, and he's on a couch somewhere with a busted up body. So we shouldn't even be having this conversation. The 49ers are the favorites. And honestly, 2 weeks from now, we might be on the podcast and I might say to you, hey, they were the best team all year. They smashed the Cowboys. They smashed the Eagles. They smashed everybody.
Yeah.
Except for a 3-game stretch when Debo and Trent Williams weren't playing in the middle of the season. It didn't matter. They led one of the biggest playoff comebacks in the history of the NFL against the Lions. It was the most boring NFL season of note. Everybody knew the 49ers were winning all year. We might have that conversation. Or somebody might come at me saying we need to fire Kyle Shanahan because we lost another one. I don't know.
Yeah. So let me just ask you first because I know obviously. Can you give me a final score prediction? And you can give me like a caveat, like I'm going to give you what I think it'll be, but because I have one.
Yeah, I think we score 31. I think it's 31 to 20.
Hmm. And so let me say this. Obviously, I'm not going to pick the Niners, and I never will, ever. They could literally have the greatest team of all time, and I will never pick them. Anyways, I'm not a hater. I'm a realist. I'm picking who I think is the best, clearly. I'm going 24-21, more closer to a defensive battle. I don't think anyone's going to score 30 if the Chiefs win.
We score 31 on everybody.
Except the Chiefs. But I will say this. If the Niners win, I think it's not going to be very close. I think it's going to be like a 34-10 game. I think it's going to be like a far outreaching game where you guys dominate. I think it's going to be one very close or you guys blow them out. I unfortunately, I think that's where the game is leading me, looking at everything, running it through my head. That's where the game leads me.
I think that honestly, we get the ball first. We go down and score 7-0. They come down, we stop them, get the ball back, score. It's 14-0. They go down, kick a field goal. It's 14-3. Then we go down and score again. It's 17-3, and we're coming up on halftime. Like I got a whole lot of money on the 49ers money line for the first half, leading at the first half. But shit, man, we had them by 10 points in 6 minutes to go last time, and they came back and it was 21-10, and they beat us 31-21. Like with 6 minutes left, they scored 3 touchdowns. So obviously, very different team now. No Tyreek Hill over there, but I think my heart tells me that I'm scared to death. But my wallet, the way I've gambled this game, my money is telling me that we win, and it's not entirely close.
What's the X factor in this game? What's the deciding thing in this game? Who is it? What is it?
I think with all the talent on both sides of the field, this is going to be. I don't want to go chalk and say, oh, it's going to be Christian McCaffrey. I have Deebo Samuel at 20-1 odds to win the MVP. And I put a lot of money on that because I think he goes for 7 or 8 catches for 80 yards and a touchdown. And then it might just be the third quarter, and it could be 17-10 in the third quarter. It could be 17-13. And he might take one of those little handoffs and go 40 or 50 yards for a touchdown. But for me, the defensive X factor, shoot, I just gave it away. We keep talking about these marquee players and how much money they make. I need to look at the box score at the end of the game, and I need to see Nick Bosa. He held out all of training camp because he wanted to get paid. He had a lackluster season because of it. He had 2 sacks last week against the Lions. We cannot allow Patrick Mahomes to dance around back there like he likes to do. We have to hit him. We have to hit him often. We have to get that jersey. I don't want to see a clean jersey at the end of the first quarter. And they have to disrupt the game because the Chiefs don't have the offense to make up with 3rd and 13, 3rd and 14, 3rd and 15. They don't have it this year.
Right.
We can't allow Pacheco to run all over the place. So Nick Bosa needs to set the edge and he needs to put Mahomes into the dirt. For me, that's that X factor of the game. I don't want to hear any of this. Oh, Bosa had 9 pressures. No. Bosa had 2.5 sacks and a tackle for loss on Pacheco on a 2nd and 7 that made it a 3rd and 9. You know what I mean? That's what I need from Nick. I need him to earn that money. And if Nick Bosa has a dominant game, like let me tell you this. Spoiler alert, Nick Bosa dominates. Are you taking the Chiefs at that point? I don't think anybody is. So,
you go flip side and say, well, if we're talking about pressures, then, Chris Jones has to get over there too, and he has to do something. But the thing is Brock Purdy is like top 3 from when I was looking at pressure completion percentage. He's like top 3 in pressure completion percentage. So it's like, even if you do get pressure on him, it doesn't matter. The marquee matchup for me has to be those corners locking down that field. Yeah. And so, well, if you look at the pressure completion percentage, Patrick Mahomes wasn't like up there for this year. But Brock was, I don't want to say, but I also do want to say that Brock was actually one.
I just mean historically against the blitz,
yeah, no, for sure.
You can't blitz Patrick Mahomes because he beats it. So you have to get home. I don't want to hear about pressures. I want to hear about sacks. Pressures are not going to beat the 49ers. Pressures
Yeah.
are not going to beat the Chiefs. Sacks will.
Yeah, he's this efficiency is ridiculous. He's top 10 in true completion percentage, number 1 in deep ball completion percentage, top 5 in pressure completion percentage, number 1 in play action completion percentage, number 2 in red zone completion percentage, and then clean pocket completion percentage is also top 5. It's ridiculous. So
sounds like an MVP to me.
I don't know. Yeah, I guess we'll have that conversation with some of the Cam Newton comments here pretty soon. Yeah, man. Again, when it comes down to this matchup, at the end of the day, you guys should not lose this game looking at everything and everybody. But the one person that really makes this difference is Patrick Mahomes on under center.
That's boring.
That's what makes a difference, unfortunately. It is
Breaking
boring.
news from the 2020 podcast. Patrick Mahomes is an X factor in the Super Bowl.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's what it is, unfortunately. That's going to be the one thing it has to be you guys. For you guys, it could be anybody and everybody. That could be that guy. But for the Chiefs, it has to be him. He has to carry the team on his back at this point. And through the playoffs, we can look at it statistically, but if we look at the last couple of games, we might be telling a different story.
Yeah, I mean, devil's advocate, they beat the Bills, who are notorious playoff choke artists, and they beat the Ravens. Lamar can't win playoff games. That's the only reason why they're there. Now, I don't agree with that, but the narrative that comes out of this game is going to be pretty interesting if this final score is 37-20. You know what I mean? 37-21. I'm not predicting that. I'm just saying it wouldn't surprise me because the Chiefs don't compete with us in any type of way statistically at all. Like, it should not be close. The problem is they just have Patrick frickin' Mahomes.
Right.
So, you take that roster and put like Trevor Lawrence on it, and they're not even in the playoffs. So,
yeah,
I
think that's fair.
It's irritating because I don't think this game should be all that close. And to be honest with you, there's a lot of ways that obviously a win is a win is a win, right? But there's a lot of, if we come out and smash them, that is legacy defining, career defining for a lot of players. And there's a lot of players on the roster that are like, will a 49ers player ever wear the number 85 again? Will they ever wear George Kittle's number again if he brings home a Super Bowl? Can Fred Warner, a 3 or 4 time all pro defensive middle linebacker with a Super Bowl win, can he start a path to Canton with a game like this? Trent Williams is already in. Christian McCaffrey, Christian McCaffrey's like 8th right now in current players rushing yards. He's really not that high up there. Now, all-purpose yards, he's a lot higher, but he gets the Super Bowl. Does that get him closer to the Hall of Fame? There's a lot of players that are here to. And frankly, it doesn't matter if the Chiefs lose. They're already one of the greatest. Like Travis Kelce going to the Hall of Fame, Patrick Mahomes going to the Hall of Fame. Like they don't need another one. Share the wealth.
Share the wealth. That's what they're coming to the table with. It's like,
I mean, frankly, if the NFL is scripted, like everybody says, they want the Niners to win this year. One of their prevailing franchises needs a return to dominance, and it's clearly not going to be the Raiders. It's clearly not going to be the Steelers anytime soon.
Right.
I didn't even make a Cowboys reference that time. You're welcome.
Yeah, I was waiting for it.
What's crazy is I think if they win this year, if the 49ers win, they're the favorites to win next year. Why wouldn't they be? They're just going to add a couple draft picks and not lose it.
Sure.
Why wouldn't they run it back?
Yeah. So, no, I agree. All right. Well, off of
unless
the
Cowboys get Saquon.
Cowboys
should sign Saquon.
I don't know about that.
Yes.